You're listening to The Pivot Point, where we unpack the defining moments that shift careers and lives. I'm your host, Laura Dionisio, founder of Lead Intact, and my mission is to spotlight the raw, real stories behind career pivots, the fears, the hopes, the messy middles, and the bold decisions that follow. If you're feeling stuck or quietly wondering what's next, I hope these stories help you see yourself a little more clearly and inspire you to start moving toward your own dream life. Let's begin. Have you ever gotten kudos from your manager or from your team lead on a job well done? And everybody's like clapping and congratulating you. And you're smiling on the outside, but on the inside, you're like, I still have 10,000 things I need to get done. Hi, I'm Laura Dionisio, and I can 100% relate. Where it just seems like there's no time to pause. There's no time, even when this has happened to me, even when my boss at the time has said, why don't you take the rest of the afternoon off? Like, you deserve it. I'm like, you know what? No, I don't. I don't deserve it. Like, I have so much other things I need to get done. And this is normalized. And not only that, when I've said those things back to my boss, they've just said, oh, okay, that's a choice. And, that's admirable. Okay, you go. I understand. You go do what you have to do, so that you don't feel so behind. Oh my God. Can we stop that? And here's the thing. It's so normalized that we have to keep chasing success. That not only though we have to chase it, but like it's applauded like, oh my God, this person's a hard worker. Can we just strike that from our vocabulary as if that's like a compliment? Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I just feel like there needs to be like an asterisk next to hard worker, because I'm at a point now where I'm like, I don't want to be a hard worker for the sake of being a hard worker. Like, I want to be an aligned worker. Can we just shift to something like that? So here's why like this topic really came to me, especially the time of year that this is coming out, which is like December, right? End of the year. The end of the year for me used to look like looking, especially because in corporate, this is the time where you reflect on the past year and do like your performance review. And inevitably, I would write down all the things I'd gotten done. And rather than be celebratory, like, oh my God, look what I've gotten done, I would look at the things I've gotten done and then immediately look at the things that I hadn't gotten done and had planned to do and immediately find myself lacking. Is this you? Let me tell you something. That is not a helpful trait. I used to think that it was. That it was because it made me perform better. But you know what it actually made me do? It made me not have that much confidence in myself. It made me, by the time that the performance review that would happen with my manager, I wouldn't necessarily advocate for myself. I'd be like, yeah, okay, like a mediocre performance review. So like, I accept. Because I was so intent on looking at the gap of the things that I hadn't gotten done versus the gain, the things that I had gotten done, that I didn't advocate myself. And worst of all, it led me to burning out over and over again. So if you are someone who is identifying themselves as someone who chases success for the purpose of chasing success, I beg you, please reconsider, because I have gone down that road and that road leads to burnout. And let me also tell you, like, from the beginning of my career, have been very high performer and like success driven to the point where it didn't matter how well I had done. It was never good enough. And this is the other reason why chasing success is not the best metric of if you're doing a good job or not. If you are chasing success, then, like me, probably you never take the time to celebrate yourself. Not only that, but you set a goal, like you have goalposts, right? And then you meet the goalpost and maybe you celebrate for like 2 seconds, but then you keep moving. It's like an ever moving goalpost. Now, I was aware of this my whole life, basically, and I thought that was a good thing because I thought that made me better. But the truth of the matter is, it just makes you tired and burnt out. And if you proceed in this way of continuing to just chase success, you are going to wake up at some point and be like, what the fuck was all this for? Okay. So let me like give some examples of like times where I chased success and I got the accolades and award and like nothing happened basically. So I remember 2 years, just 2 years out of college. So my first job out of college, I ended up with a promotion, a lead position, a bonus, an award from both the company that I was working for and our customer. This is really uncommon, right? And I remember there was like a employee lunch, like an appreciation lunch, and I wasn't even going to go. I was like, oh, whatever, no big deal. The admin assistant who was putting it together was like, Laura, I strongly suggest that you go because you've done so well this year. But I was like, oh, but there's so much stuff to get done. I don't have time because it was like a Friday noon or something. Like, I can't leave the office. Like, are you serious? But this was me. And how young was I at the time? I was 23 at the time. And I remember I got presented this award and like, it wasn't just my boss, it was like my boss's boss. And that person's boss came up to me, shook my hand and said, you have done really well. You caught the eye of the customer for your great job. And you are really like representing the company really well. And I shook everyone's hand and whatever. But I just did not take the time to appreciate that, like, wow, that is quite an accomplishment. Instead, I took that reward, looked at it, and thought to myself, ah, great. That means that they're going to expect more out of me. Like, literally, that was my response. Is that you? Can you relate to that? And then the next time I got like a pretty hefty award like that wasn't really common for the company was like maybe like 10 years later or so, maybe a little bit more. And again, like I had posted about it on social media because it was a team award. Because it was a team award, I felt more comfortable in like sharing. I'm like, look, my team got this amazing award. I'm so proud to be a part of this team. And then my aunt had commented like, hey, congratulations, Laura. You did amazing. You have always been a hard worker. I'm not surprised you got this. And my response back was something along the lines of like, oh, thank you. But I'm just part of the team. It was a team effort. I couldn't have done it without the team. And my aunt was like, it's your name on that award. And I was like, huh. And again, I was just kind of nonchalant about the award. In fact, now the awards are on my wall, but they used to just be collecting dust in the basement somewhere, Because as a very success-driven person, I'm like, I don't have time for this. I have shit to do. Like, honestly, that was just my thought. And anytime I got any sort of accolade, I just thought it's a sign to work harder, to push harder. And eventually what ended up happening was I got burnt out one too many times. And I remember I had to make a pretty difficult decision at the time where I was just like, I really like this job a lot. I'm passionate about the cause. I really enjoy those I work with. I enjoy my team lead, my team, my teammates and all that. And I'm fried. My nervous system is fried. I found myself sitting on the floor crying, seemingly out of nowhere. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So mind you, again, I hadn't really done much introspection at the time in terms of the identity of who I was, but I just knew that I was a very success-driven person. And I also knew that I kind of, again, the point that I was saying about earlier, I looked around me and I'm like, what am I doing this for? I'm not even enjoying any of it. Not enjoying any of it. I'm working long hours. I'm stressed. I'm pissed off. And yes, I'm like happy and feeling gratitude for being in the project that I'm on and grateful for the coworkers I have. But it's just like, what was all this for when I'm sitting on the floor crying because of this? Like, this is not life. And I ended up taking a job that had less hours, less responsibilities. And I really thought that was going to make me feel better. I thought this is going to give me a chance to recalibrate. I thought, oh, you know what? I have this side business. It'll give me more time to work on my side business. And instead, what happened was because my nervous system was fried, I was mentally just like done. I basically was coasting at this other job, still performing pretty well because, when you're a high performer, your coasting is still pretty fucking good. And I felt like shit. I didn't understand at the time. It wasn't until much later. I honestly fell into a little bit of a depression in all seriousness. Had a hard time getting up from the bed, didn't really feel much. That like it was not good. And in retrospect, like I understand now that what happened was I for so many years had this persona of being a successful high performer that when I took a job that didn't require as much of me and I was no longer overexerting myself, I was no longer getting phone calls, text messages, and IMs at the same time, and an inbox that didn't seem to end, and endless meetings, I felt like a failure. I started feeling like, oh my God, I am a lazy person. And I didn't understand it at the time, but yes, I changed my job because I understood that staying in that kind of environment, and again, this is not, I'm not blaming anyone, but staying in that kind of environment where I'd allowed myself to be overworked like that would lead me to probably a lot more nervous breakdown. Even though I knew that, I hadn't made the identity shift yet that my value as an employee, basically my value as a teammate, came from being a high performer and super success driven person. And so I felt like because I wasn't pushing myself the way I used to, I was just like, do I mean nothing? Am I of less value? And so at the time, I was like shaming myself and feeling guilty for not burning myself out. And it was just like this fight inside me of like, a part of me was like, yo, it's time to rest. We never even celebrated. Like, this is why we took this job is so we could chill the fuck out. And the other part's like, you're lazy as fuck and you suck. Like, really, it was just clashing. And so if you are relating to this, if you just left a toxic workplace, or maybe it wasn't a toxic workplace, but you were just like burnt out, you were like working so much, and you are now transitioning into something that's like more chill, maybe you drop down to part-time, and you're feeling all kinds of way. You're feeling like, oh, am I kind of worthless? Am I lazy? Am I not worth anything at all? I'm just here to let you know that I totally understand. And it's normal for somebody who has been so driven for so long, who has been chasing success and ambition for so long, who has wrapped their identity around being that successful, ambitious, high performer for so long, to start to see themselves as that. I'm not saying it's true. I am saying it's understandable and normal. And here's what I invite you to think about instead. Let's talk through the who. Who are you as a professional person, right? Who are you as a coworker? Who are you as a teammate? Now, in my stories before, I had always seen myself as the high performer, someone who always has her shit together, and ultra successful, high achiever. Now, I am not saying that there's anything wrong with that. What I am inviting you to do instead is, if you are relating to me and you see yourself as those things, make room for more. And here's why. Because if you just see yourself as those things, when you are no longer high performing the way that you used to, which, by the way, probably your definition of high performing is like doing whatever it takes to get the job done, probably, which is not always the most efficient because sometimes that requires overworking, not resting, when in fact, maybe resting would have made you more efficient and would have taken less time to do the thing. Okay. If you only see yourself as a high performer, high achiever, like whatever, like success oriented, that kind of thing, then if you are not doing those things, then you start to see yourself as worthless, right? That sounds harsh, but on the inside, that's probably what's happening. That's what happened for me. Because I was no longer doing any of those things, I'm like, well, that was my worth as a professional, then I guess I must mean nothing. So instead, make room for something else. What else? Who are you aside from how you're performing or the success part of you? Okay. So for me, I thought about it and I was like, I'm actually a really inquisitive person. I love learning. And so, oh, have I been doing that? Actually, yeah, I have, because that's part of what makes me really good at my job, is because I don't hesitate to go talk to like a subject matter expert and be like, hey, can I have 30 minutes of your time and talk about this one topic? And then also, part of my identity is I am great with teamwork. Like, I'm a very team-oriented person. So not only would I reach out to the subject matter expert, I ask my teammates, hey, do you want to join this thing? I just want to learn about this. And so basically, I started to think about other aspects of who I am and started seeing, okay, aside from working my ass off when it's needed, what are other ways that make me who I am? I'm like, oh, okay, well, I love increasing my knowledge. I'm a team-oriented person. I am highly organized and great with documentation. So I just started naming all these other things about me aside from working my ass off, so that from an identity perspective, I started to see my worth was not just tied to how many hours I worked and how hard I worked. Does that make sense? So, like for you, if you are resonating with this, and yes, you're like, high performer, all that, like what else is there about you? The other thing about me, I was like, I like to have fun. And so I would do this thing where I would sometimes randomly send GIFs, GIFs. I don't know how you actually pronounce that, to my coworkers out of nowhere. Or anytime I connected with a coworker, if I needed something like a report or data or something like that, I would make sure to engage in personal conversation just to be like, oh, hey, what'd you do this winter? Oh my God, you love skiing? What are your favorite mountains to go to? You know, that kind of thing. Not small talk for the sake of small talk, but because I'm like, oh, who I am is someone who connects and genuinely cares about like the human aspect of my coworkers. So I just started to build a more well-rounded person within me, like how I identified as a professional who is amazing at what they do. That's step one, is basically if you find that your pure motivation is to be successful, to hit all the marks, I just encourage you to expand beyond that. That way, that is not your only metric for what makes you valuable as a working professional. The other thing that I would encourage you to think about is my favorite framework, the why, what, how. Now, when I was not thinking about any of this, my why was like, I just need to be seen as a high performer and a hard worker. I didn't even know that at the time. Now, what happens if that is your motivation for showing up to work? That means I'm saying yes to assignments, even though I'm overburdened. I'm saying yes to deadlines, even though I know that I have a lot more responsibilities and can't make them. I'm taking on things that aren't necessarily mine, etc. Do you see where I'm going? So it's like, let's pause for a moment and be very intentional about how we show up at work. So take a moment and think about your why. Why do you show up to work? And don't just say, I'm there to pay the bills. If you're listening to this podcast and have been listening, that tells me you're a little bit more of a deep thinker than that. So what else? What else makes you get up and log onto your computer or whatever your job is? And for me, I realized when I really thought deeply about it, yes, I am a high performer and I'm successful, but I don't show up to work to be like, I'm going to be successful today. No, actually, it was really simple. For me, it was like, I love having the sense of joy and having fun at work. Okay? Seems weird, especially because my background's in engineering, but that's what it was. And how this helped me is that is how I started gauging whether my day was successful or not, whether my week was successful or not. Did I have fun? Did I feel joy? Then yes, this was a successful week. I stopped using the external metrics of success of like, how much stuff could I get done? Now, let's go to the what part of the why, what, how, because part of the things that brought me joy was actually meeting deadlines, was actually getting stuff done. But now at least my motivation is the feeling of joy and having fun, not necessarily the doing of the thing. And then the how piece of it is like how I end up showing up. What projects do I actually take on? So instead of just mindlessly saying yes to everything, I'm taking time to think about, okay, am I having fun? Is this a joyous experience? And sometimes, look, with work, sometimes doesn't always align. But instead of just randomly just saying yes to every single thing that my manager asked me, I would take the time to pause and be reflective and say, you know, these are the things that is currently on my plate. This is what I have anticipating. And you know what? Yes, I would take that. And you know what? Given that I have also been a functional team lead in the past, when somebody includes me in on their process like that, I actually have a higher admiration for that person who lays out, these are the things on my plate, these are the deadlines for this thing and that thing. And the thing you're asking me requires me to kind of push one aside. Like that actually, I have a lot more respect for that person because that tells me they're processing things. That tells me that they have like a bigger vision for all the other things that are happening more than the person who just says yes to everything that I ask. So keep that in mind. 2 things that I am sharing today, the identity piece. Who are you from a professional standpoint? Beyond the person who's successful, beyond the person who chases being a high performer, right? And then the second part is apply the why, what, how framework. What's your why for showing up to work? And what are some of the things that bring you, in my case, like joy and fun? What are some of the things that you like doing at work or that you're good at? And then how can you show up given your why and what you know you like to do and are good at? If this episode resonated with you, as always, subscribe, share it with a friend. And if you would like more support in the identity piece, in maybe you're in the middle of like feeling really burnt out and you're not really sure what your next step is, book a free 20-minute call with me. And I would love to support you and see how we can work together. And with that, I will see you next time. And don't forget to proceed as if success is inevitable, because it is. All right, catch you next time. All right, friend, that's it for today's drop. If this episode hits something deep, don't just sit with it, act on it. Share this with a friend who needs to hear it, and then head to www.leadintact.com to grab your free heart-aligned career transition starter or book a free 20-minute call with me. I'm here when you're ready to stop feeling stuck and start moving toward what you really want. Catch you next time.